Maria's wedding day should have been the happiest day of her life. The flowers were perfect, the dress was stunning, and the love of her family filled the air. But in a single shocking moment, the day turned into a nightmare that left everyone speechless. What could drive a bride to abandon her reception, leaving behind the man she had once believed was her future? Stay with us as we unravel Maria's journey, a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately triumph. Discover how she found the courage to rise above humiliation, reclaim her dignity, and rebuild a life on her own terms. To understand how a day filled with promises turned into one of revelation, let's go back to where it all began. Maria stood in her childhood bedroom, the morning light casting a golden glow across the soft pastel walls and the delicate lace of her wedding dress. The dress fit her perfectly, its intricate beading catching the sunlight in shimmering bursts. To anyone else, she looked like a bride in a fairy tale. But inside Maria's heart was a battlefield of doubt and hope, with neither side clearly winning. Her dog, Daisy, padded across the room, her tail wagging as she nudged Maria's hand with her nose. Maria smiled down at her loyal companion. "You always know when something's up, don't you?" she murmured, stroking Daisy's soft fur. Linda, her best friend and maid of honor, breezed into the room carrying a bouquet of fresh peonies. "Maria," Linda said, setting the flowers down and looking her up and down, "you're a goddess, but that look on your face tells me you're not feeling it." Spill Maria hesitated. She had always been honest with Linda, but today words felt heavy. "It's nothing," she started, then sighed. "It's everything. Evelyn's comments, Ethan's distance. I just want today to be perfect." Linda's expression darkened. "Evelyn. That woman could criticize Sunshine for being too bright. And Ethan, well, let's just say I'm watching him closely." She softened her tone, placing a hand on Maria's shoulder. "But you deserve this day. You deserve happiness. If anyone tries to ruin that, they'll have to answer to me." Maria managed a small laugh, but Linda's words stirred something deeper. Could she truly claim happiness if she continued to ignore the doubts that had been growing louder since the rehearsal dinner? She thought back to that night. Evelyn's pointed remarks about her family's background and their lack of sophistication had been met with polite chuckles from Ethan's side of the room. Ethan had brushed them off, saying, "That's just how she is." But Maria had felt each word like a cut. And then there was the moment she overheard Ethan speaking with his colleague, Nathan. "This wedding is going to be great for my public image," Ethan had said, his voice carrying an air of calculation. Maria had frozen in place, her stomach sinking. Was their love nothing more than a stepping stone for his ambitions? Her father's voice interrupted her thoughts, calling from the bottom of the staircase. "Maria, sweetheart, they're ready for you." She looked to Linda, who gave her a supportive nod. "Deep breath," Linda said. "You've got this." Maria knelt to give Daisy one last scratch behind the ears. "Be good, girl," she whispered, feeling the weight of her dog's unconditional love. Daisy barked softly, her tail wagging as if to say, "I'm here for you." As Maria descended the staircase, her father stood waiting, his face a mix of pride and emotion. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. Maria took it, drawing strength from his steady presence. The ceremony venue was breathtaking, rows of white chairs set against a backdrop of blooming hydrangeas and soft music from a live quartet. Guests turned to admire Maria as she walked down the aisle, her dress catching the sunlight with every step. But while the scene was perfect, Maria's heart was anything but. Ethan stood at the altar, his smile tight, his posture stiff. Maria searched his face for the man she had fallen in love with, but all she saw was someone preoccupied, as if he were going through the motions. And then there was Evelyn, seated in the front row, her sharp eyes fixed on Maria, her expression unreadable but undeniably cold. The officiant began with warm, welcoming words, but Maria found herself distracted by the undercurrents of tension around her. When it was time for Ethan to recite his vows, his delivery was smooth, polished, but it lacked the vulnerability Maria had hoped for. Each word felt rehearsed, designed for the audience rather than for her. When her turn came, Maria spoke from her heart, her voice trembling with emotion. She shared memories of their early days together, her hopes for their future, and her unwavering belief in the power of love. Her side of the aisle responded with soft smiles and nods of approval. But from Ethan's side, there was only polite silence. The contrast stung more than Maria wanted to admit. As she finished, Evelyn let out a barely audible sigh, a sound that sliced through Maria's composure. Her father gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, grounding her just enough to hold back tears. But as she gazed into Ethan's eyes, she saw no reflection of the love she had poured into her vows. Instead, she saw a man going through the motions, and it chilled her to the core. Even as they exchanged rings and shared a kiss, Maria's mind was spinning. She had dreamed of this day for so long, but now standing at the altar, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was missing. The applause that followed felt distant, almost hollow. Maria smiled for the cameras, but her heart whispered a truth she wasn't ready to face. The perfect day she had envisioned was slipping further out of reach. Before we delve deeper into Maria's journey and the unforgettable events that unfolded, let me ask you this. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to summon strength in the face of betrayal, hit that like button. This story might just inspire you to find courage in your own life. Now let's continue. The ceremony itself was a flawless spectacle of beauty and precision. White rose petals lined the aisle. The string quartet played a soft melody, and the sunlight streaming through the venue's arched windows bathed everything in a golden hue. Yet as Maria stood beside Ethan, the weight of the moment felt wrong. Every detail was perfect, but the feelings she yearned for were conspicuously absent. Ethan's hand rested lightly over hers as the officiant welcomed everyone, yet the warmth she expected wasn't there. Maria's eyes flicked to the crowd. Her family smiled encouragingly, her father holding her mother's hand with quiet pride. On Ethan's side, however, the expressions were colder, more reserved. Evelyn sat poised like a queen, her sharp eyes scrutinizing every detail, her lips curved into a thin, controlled smile. When Ethan began his vows, Maria listened intently, hoping for a spark of intimacy to dissolve her unease. His words were eloquent, rehearsed to perfection. "Maria, you are my rock, my light, my inspiration," he began, his voice carrying just enough gravitas to impress the audience. But to Maria, it felt hollow. She had written her vows with trembling hands and an overflowing heart. Ethan's, in contrast, sounded like a speech crafted for an audience, rather than a declaration of love. As Maria recited her vows, her voice cracked with emotion. She shared snippets of their journey, how they met, the laughter they shared, the dreams they had built together. Her family wiped away tears, but on Ethan's side, the response was restrained. Evelyn exchanged a glance with a guest, her lips pressing into a line. The ceremony reached its climax as the officiant declared them husband and wife. Ethan leaned in for the kiss, a brief brush of lips that felt more like a formality than a shared moment. As they turned to face the crowd, applause erupted. Maria's family beamed, clapping enthusiastically. Ethan's side joined in, but their applause was polite, measured. Evelyn's smile never reached her eyes. The walk back down the aisle should have been triumphant, yet Maria felt an unsettling detachment. Ethan's hand gripped hers firmly, but there was no tenderness in his touch. Guests tossed rose petals into the air, shouting congratulations. But Maria felt as though she were walking a tightrope, performing for a crowd that expected her to be perfect. Behind the scenes, as the newlyweds prepared for the reception, Maria finally found a moment to breathe. She turned to Ethan, hoping to connect, to share the joy she had imagined for this day. "We did it," she said softly, searching his eyes. Ethan smiled briefly. "Yeah, we did." But almost immediately his phone buzzed. "Sorry, I need to check this," he muttered, stepping aside. Maria stood alone, the weight of her dress suddenly unbearable. The chatter of guests filtered through the doors, but it sounded distant, like a world she no longer belonged to. She pressed her palms against the wall, steadying herself. When Linda appeared, her face clouded with concern, Maria finally allowed the tears to spill. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. Linda placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Maria. But you don't have to pretend everything's fine. Whatever you decide, I'm here." The words settled over Maria like a fragile shield. She straightened, wiped her tears, and prepared to step into the reception hall. The day wasn't over, but deep down, Maria knew this was only the beginning of a much longer battle. The reception hall was a stunning contrast to the rising turmoil in Maria's heart. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over impeccably set tables, adorned with cascading floral centerpieces. The air buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses, a celebration in full swing. Yet for Maria, the festivities felt hollow, a mask hiding the cracks forming in her new marriage. As Maria entered on Ethan's arm, the guests erupted into applause. Smiling on cue, she felt like an actress performing a role she hadn't auditioned for. Ethan, ever composed, led her to their table, where his mother Evelyn sat poised like a queen overseeing her kingdom. Her sharp gaze swept over Maria, as if inspecting a piece of art she was not entirely satisfied with. The evening unfolded with speeches, starting with Maria's father, whose heartfelt words brought a lump to her throat. He spoke of her kindness, resilience, and the joy she brought to their family. But as he looked at Ethan, Maria noticed a flicker of hesitation in his voice. It was subtle but enough to confirm what she feared. He saw the same cracks she did. When Evelyn stood to speak, the mood shifted. Her words, though polite on the surface, carried a condescending undertone. "Maria has brought a unique charm to our family," Evelyn said, pausing just long enough to make her meaning clear. "And we are grateful for the love she inspires in Ethan." The audience's polite applause felt like daggers. Maria clenched her hands beneath the table, willing herself to stay calm. She caught Linda's eye across the room, her best friend's expression mirroring the storm brewing inside her. The first dance began with the DJ announcing the couple to the center of the floor. As the soft strains of their chosen song filled the room, Maria rested her hand on Ethan's shoulder, searching his face for a glimmer of connection. But his eyes darted around the room, scanning the crowd like a politician ensuring his audience's approval. "Are you okay?" Maria asked quietly as they swayed. "Of course," Ethan replied, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Everything's perfect." For the first time, Maria allowed herself to question, perfect for whom? When the dance ended, Ethan immediately excused himself, mumbling something about a work email. Maria stood alone on the dance floor, her heart sinking as she watched him cross the room to his mother. Evelyn whispered something to him, her expression smug, while Ethan nodded in agreement. Linda appeared at Maria's side, her voice low but firm. "You don't deserve this." Maria shook her head, blinking back tears. "Number I don't." The evening reached its breaking point during the cake-cutting ceremony. The room hushed as Maria and Ethan stood before the elaborate three-tiered cake, the photographer directing them to pose. Ethan's hand felt heavy over hers as they lifted the knife together. Evelyn's voice sliced through the quiet. "Such a beautiful cake," she remarked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I imagine Maria's family must have been so proud to contribute. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the room. Maria froze, her hand trembling on the knife. She turned to Ethan, expecting him to defend her, but he simply laughed nervously. "Mom, let's not do this now." Something inside Maria snapped. She stepped back, letting the knife clatter onto the table. "Enough," she said, her voice trembling but strong. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. Maria faced Evelyn directly. "I have endured your insults, your condescension, and your constant need to belittle me and my family. But this ends now." Evelyn's expression turned icy. "Maria, this isn't the time." "No," Maria interrupted, her voice rising. "This is exactly the time. You've made it clear from the beginning that I'll never be good enough for you. And Ethan," she turned to her husband, her heart breaking as she spoke, "you've stood by and let it happen. Your silence has been louder than any words." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Maria held up her hand. "Don't. This was supposed to be about love, about partnership. But I see now it was never about us. It was about appearances. And I refuse to live my life as a prop in someone else's show." With that, Maria walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, as the stunned silence of the room followed her. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, each breath steadier than the last. She wasn't sure where she was going, but one thing was certain: she was finally free. Maria stepped into the crisp night air, her breath visible in the cool evening breeze. The sound of muffled chatter and music from the reception hall faded behind her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was alone, with her thoughts, her choices, and her newfound resolve. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, and for a moment she considered ignoring it. But when she saw Linda's name, she picked up. "Where are you?" Linda's voice was urgent, yet steady. "Outside," Maria replied, her voice calm but hollow. "I needed to get away." "I'm coming," Linda said without hesitation. Maria stood at the edge of the parking lot, arms wrapped around herself, gazing at the stars above. She thought about the little girl who had once dreamed of a perfect wedding, the young woman who had fallen in love with a man who seemed like everything she'd ever wanted. That girl, that woman, felt like strangers now. The Maria standing here tonight was someone else entirely. Someone braver, stronger, and ready to take control of her life. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Linda appeared out of breath but determined. "You're not going back in there, are you?" she asked. Maria shook her head. "Number, I can't." "Good," Linda said firmly. "Then let's go. You don't have to do this alone." The drive back to Linda's apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the car engine. Daisy greeted Maria at the door, her tail wagging furiously. Maria knelt to embrace her dog, the unconditional love in Daisy's eyes bringing tears to her own. Linda placed a cup of tea on the table and sat beside Maria. "What now?" she asked gently. Maria sighed, the weight of the evening pressing down on her. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know I can't go back. Not to Ethan, not to that life." Linda nodded. "Then we'll figure it out, step by step." Maria woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains, the scent of fresh coffee wafting through the air. She sat up, still in the dress she'd worn the night before. The events of the reception came rushing back, but instead of regret, she felt an unexpected sense of peace. Linda appeared holding 2 mugs. "Morning," she said, handing Maria a cup. "How are you feeling?" Maria took a sip, the warmth soothing her frayed nerves. "Like I just walked away from everything I thought I wanted," she said, "and somehow that feels right." Over the next few days, Maria began the process of reclaiming her life. She called her father, who offered his unwavering support, and her brother, who promised to help retrieve her belongings from Ethan's house. With Linda's help, she met with a lawyer to discuss the logistics of ending her marriage. Each step, though painful, was a move toward freedom. Maria's story didn't stay private for long. A guest had filmed her confrontation with Evelyn and Ethan, and the video quickly went viral. While some comments were cruel, many were supportive. Women shared their own stories of choosing themselves over toxic relationships, and Maria found solace in their words. One evening, as she scrolled through messages of encouragement, Maria realized how many people her actions had inspired. "I never thought leaving would mean so much to so many," she said to Linda, who nodded with a smile. "That's because most people are too afraid to do what you did," Linda replied. "You showed them it's possible." Weeks later, Maria stood in her new apartment, surrounded by boxes and a sense of renewal. Daisy lay at her feet, her presence a constant reminder of loyalty and love. Maria opened her journal and wrote, "Today I choose myself. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. I'm no longer afraid of the unknown. I'm excited for it." Maria's story is one of courage and self-discovery, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to rewrite our own narratives. To our viewers, have you ever had to make a life-changing decision? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's inspire each other to find the strength to choose what's best for ourselves.